He just heard the click.
Yeah.
On
Oh.
those toggle switches. It wasn't his. He thought he was lit up.
Yes, but those
You're
that have
so
worked
mean,
nuclear,
Dan.
listen for that stuff.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You're some means. I'm gonna help for that one.
Oh.
No, I'm just getting
All
even.
right, we're on.
Right.
We're live.
Okay,
Let me share this.
you guys share it and then we'll talk. Okay.
Oh God, that's me.
We were live a little bit before.
Yeah.
They got to hear the story about Dave, I think.
A lot of it.
No.
Oh, well, they'll ask later.
Yeah.
What do you mean, Genesis?
43, I think.
43 verse 10.
June 43, 10.
Yeah,
We
and-
just got the movie.
And it's also on the blog.
Hmm?
I haven't put 44
Amazon?
up yet, but.
Yeah.
it's on the blog.
Yeah.
No?
It's, is Genesis history. All the series of video material.
What you talking about? Yes.
It's the advertisements on Facebook.
Yes.
I know you've seen it.
Yes, I
So I
have.
went and bought the Blu-ray.
Okay, cool.
So
All right.
I'll make it available for the church.
All right.
Actually, I could make it available. All they need to do is log into Netflix or.
I'm
Are we
ready.
live?
There's.
Yeah.
We have been
Okay.
live, yeah.
Oh, it's
All right, I'm just waiting. I didn't know if you were still talking to me.
Start a watch party.
All
I
right.
was talking to myself.
All right, so in Genesis 43, verse 10,
We
we'll
need to
start.
pray in.
No,
We did
he
already.
did
Oh,
already.
okay.
Yeah. Just to catch up where we're at here, they're concerned with the safe return of Benjamin to the father, right? And Judah has been talking to the Lord, Joseph, and trying to convince him to let the boy go and that he would stay in his place and become a servant or a slave to him. Anyway, what they're trying to do is this is the part where they're trying to get him to go to Egypt, to Joseph, because they're honorable men, I guess is the word that they
Right.
used. And he's talking with his father, and he's going to say that in verse 10 it says, "For except we had lingered, surely now we had returned the second time." They've been delaying going for so long, so his father would finally agree that they could have been there and back already.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that trip, they estimated would take about 5 to 6 days, 7 days, roughly, to make that trip on the donkeys. And so about a 14-day period has passed, or they figure about 20 days. It's passed since the first confrontation. We said, no way.
And what we talked last week about actually kind of told the truth to their father.
A little bit of it, yes. Right. So here's where we're at. And so when they say linger, themselves and families in distress for want of corn or food.
So if you hadn't been shoulder and let Ben go with us, we would have already been there and back.
And nobody would be,
Apparently, we're running out of food.
they're
too.
running out of food, yes.
Yeah.
They've got to make the trip, right? They're already cutting it in rations is what's happening, okay? So then verse 11 starts out and it says, "And their father Israel said unto them, If it must be so now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels and carry down the man a present, a little balm, a little honey, nuts, and almonds." Now, this is kind of unusual, right? Okay, because he's saying take the fruits in the land. We're going to get into that in a second here. But being in some measure convinced by these words and reasoning, right? Also in part, at least reconciled to let Benjamin go with them, because as he knows it says, "and their father Israel." So they put him on the spot where he had to make a decision for
Right.
the whole tribe.
Yeah, couldn't
Not-
be just his personal.
He had
Otherwise, he would have said Jacob, right?
no way around not sending Benjamin.
Right.
Okay? It must be so now, do this. that's the hardest part for a father to say. If he's got to go, let him go now. Don't delay.
He's lost one son.
Yes,
He has one son that's in Egypt incarcerated.
right. And now
So
another
he's
one.
kind of lost that one, and now he's afraid he's gonna lose another one.
Right. Right.
But the first one he lost was due to, he thinks, letting
wild
him go
animal.
by himself.
Right. He let him go by
Right,
himself.
but
down
this
the
time
track.
he's letting him go with all the other brothers, so.
Right, so-
But hasn't God told him that, about the 12 tribes?
Not yet.
Up this time, not yet?
Hasn't been decided yet.
And-
Alright.
And they're not really that hungry because they still have fruit, honey,
Right.
and nuts.
But-
It's about
okay.
their animals, I think.
No, the
Oh, that's true,
this-
because they can't eat fruit.
I'll actually get into that in just a second.
Okay.
For you, because there's some history on this that
Okay.
we'll get into, and I think you'll like it. Anyway, it's the fruits of the land in your vessels, as were peculiar produce of the land of Canaan, and the best of it, that it was the most famous and praised for, right? As the word signifies, these Jacob advised to take and put into their sacks and carry it back in their corn in exchange, right? Now, when they say carry down the man a present, this would be for the great man or governor of Egypt. They're trying to not favor, but just show,
Establish a relationship.
yes, yeah, establish a relationship, but also show some respect.
Mhm.
Offer a gift. You know, what do you have? Nothing, right? That anyway. So this he proposed to be done in order to pursue that friendship, that he might take kindly respectful of them and release Simeon, right, and send Benjamin back with him. That's what he's thinking. All right. The present consists of the following items: the little balm or rosin, the gum which drops from the pine trees and the like. We've all seen rosin, right? Or balm. It grew on this side of the Jordan near Jericho and En-Gedi, and not beyond Jordan in the land of Gilead. It was a particular type. You could mix it with oil, you know, like sheep's oil, or from the lamb. That's it.
From the wool.
Wool,
Yeah.
from the wool, right? And it was a soothing balm. It actually has an antiseptic property to it. Okay. And they were famous for that in that area, the honey in that area, and also a little honey. The land of Canaan is always been referred to as the land of milk and honey. Remember that? Well, some parts of it were famous for the production of honey for its flavor, such as the area around Ziph. It was called from thence the honey of Ziphim, right? So where his home, where he established the trees, just south in that field is where that city now, and it's the field of the honey. He lived right there. That was readily available to them. Okay, it was later on. Anyway, then the spices of various sorts, a collection of them. It was thought by Bocart and the others that the sortax is particularly meant. The best of the sort being, as Finney says in Judah, the tegrum. It's a wax with crushed root or leaves that they put together. They would crush up. You can take berry elder root and crush it up, and you have that berry smell, right?
Mhm.
And they would do things like that to refreshen the air around your house or whatever, right? So they're sending that stuff. And myrrh, okay, natural gum resin. We know about myrrh, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thorny tree species, right? It's been used throughout history as perfume, incense, and medicine. Also embalming. The Egyptians used it for embalming, right? Myrrh mixed with wine was common across ancient cultures for general pleasure as an analgesic. I thought that was pretty interesting, right?
Mhm.
They had all kinds of natural cures that they had already figured out from the plants and things, right? Now, the nuts and almonds and oils of nuts and the oil of almonds. The pistachio nut, as Jacob observed from Ar Makar, which is a history of the area, they were well known in Syria and were good for food and drink and against the bites of serpents.
Hmm.
Okay? Bocart observes are frequently mentioned by naturalists along with almonds as very much like them. For human consumption, but not for animals. So it was mostly feed for the animals. It was a substitute for corn. Does that make sense? The donkeys could digest the hull. We couldn't. But the thing about the snake bites, raw almond is toxic. It's alkaline,
Mhm.
right? And most of serpents' bites are an acid. They're neurogenic, right? If you put alkaline on it, it helps neutralize it. They had discovered by putting that on there, poison it.
Like the black walnut shell.
Yeah, like for
the green shell around
the-
the black walnut is good for
ringworm.
Yeah.
Yeah, ringworm. It'll draw it out.
Skin diseases.
Yeah,
and
skin
so forth,
diseases. Yeah.
So an almond
Mhm.
actually is covered in a green
Right.
as
Mhm.
well.
Right. Yes, green colored.
So
Yes.
it wouldn't have been the almond itself, but it would have
Been
been
the whole.
The whole of
Yes.
the
So that's why that. And so in the land of Canaan, they produced some corn near springs or wells, though but little, right? It is confirmed here for certain that there were other fruits which were serviceable for food, as appear from this verse. Now, what is not in here is the fact that the servants would not eat of the corn. If it looked like the master and his family was getting low, they would go pick nuts and berries.
had to feed their animals.
Yes.
And if nothing's growing, what are you going to feed them?
You feed them what you can dig up and crush up.
And you can't even. That's a good part of the food supply.
Yes, right.
Milk and whatever.
Right,
else.
that's also nutrient for the babies and the children. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was a very hard time for them, right? Kind of reminds me of the time period when we had the Great Depression, when there wasn't any. Verse 12 says, "And take double money in your hand, and the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks, carry it again in your hand." Peradventure was an oversight.
So take the money that
You
you took with you the first time.
right. Same amount again. Yes,
There's the start right
that's
there.
where it's
First fruit basket ever did.
is actually in the Bible.
You should write that down because that should be one of your upcoming sermons.
Make a note.
Put it in your
I
notepad
can
in your
I can
phone.
put notes right here in my
There
thing.
you go.
All right.
First
Fruit basket.
Now, I said, where'd I put that?
fruit basket,
All right.
business gift.
Now, you take double the money in your hand. Then that what they carried before, either to buy as much as or more as they they did originally, right? But because there's a greater scarcity of corn, as it was observed, right? And also to make it doubly dear, that is different from the money they are also bid to take in return for this found in their sacks. So what is happening? He says, take double what you took before and what was returned. So it's three
as
times.
well as the gifts.
Yes, as well as the gifts, right?
I want my son back.
Yes.
That's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying, right? I don't care what
you
it costs.
appease him.
Whatever you
Yeah,
got to
Any
do.
way you can, because I want my son
I
back.
want my son back, and I want the other one back.
Mhm.
Right?
Well, he doesn't know the other one, right? It's
Sim-
there.
No.
Simeon? He didn't return.
Yes, it means.
They told him
Oh, right, that's right. He was
he was held, yeah,
Right.
because he's the hothead, right?
So his brain pattern or his thought process right now is if I send all these gifts and all this money, it'll make because right now he's thinking they want to keep his young. But if we send all these gifts and they won't keep his youngest. boy.
Right.
He's not the
They'll
youngest.
send them all.
Benjamin
Oh,
is.
Benjamin
Yes.
is,
Yeah.
yes.
So, but because
The-
money
the
wasn't
two
a
from
problem
Rebecca.
for this family.
Right.
They're wealthy.
Right.
Jacob was wealthy just in the inheritance from his father, right? So, anyway, prevention was an oversight. That's the key part of that verse, right? Some mistake of the governors or those that were under him. This is what Jacob's thinking, right? Concerned in the sale of corn and receiving money for it. Jacob could not tell how it occurred, but some way or the other, he supposed a mistake was made. You know, he's a pretty intelligent man, so he's trying to figure this out because some of this doesn't make sense, right? All right, and it says, verse 13, take also your brother and arise and go again unto the man. And then 14, and God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. Right? The fact that he said, and God Almighty give you mercy before the man, Who has the control of all men in his hands? Kings, princes, governors? God. That's who he appeals to, right? Even those that are the most cruel and hard-hearted, rough and severe in their tempers and dispositions, they have represented this man to be to Jacob. Remember they said that he treated them cruelly and called them thieves and spies, and do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he has a very negative look at this governor,
Mhm.
not a positive,
Right.
because of what his boys have told.
Right.
So that's why he did. Well, and dealing with somebody like that, he is remembering his father-in-law.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
right.
All
And
he
what did
was-
his father-in-law want? He was a greedy man.
He was a
so
greedy man,
let's
he
see
wanted
what
the
we
money.
can do.
Right, and wealth and
Mhm.
prosperity, and the attention. Jacob's like, okay, give him it. I got plenty. I don't need it. Right? So I'm gonna appease this man, right? But I'm gonna call God in on this and have him watch over it. Okay. Now Jacob therefore sent him a present to soften his mind, and now he puts up and dismisses his sons with his good wishes for them. His prayer is that God would treat any of them badly, would not treat any of them badly, right? The word "not" is not in there.
Right.
So that he may send away your brother Benjamin. He wants Simeon released and send him with Benjamin toward home when they return. He's saying send them ahead. As soon as you get there, he sees Benjamin, you get Simeon, you send those two back before you buy or sell. You know, does that make sense?
Yep.
He's like, get him out of there, right? That's what he's instructing them to do. Okay. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. This he said, not as utterly defeated or despairing on their return, but as expressive of his patient submission to the divine will, be as it may be, he turns it over to God.
It
And
takes
that's-
him so long to turn it over to
He
God.
does. He waits so long every time. You
It
ever notice
really
Last minute.
does. It's like, what is wrong with you? Every single time when you finally say, God, okay, it all works out.
that? Right. But isn't he like the rest of us? The
He
man
needs a
tried to
wife.
solve his own. Well, he's got one. Don't we always try to solve our own problems first?
Right.
And it should be the other way around. We should go to God first,
Yeah.
so that He can give us the answers to the problem.
Right.
It's that
Or
don't
have-
tell how big your problems are, tell your problems how big.
It says, and they took that present, and they took it in their hand, and Benjamin, and rose up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Right? They took the present their father directed to bring his gifts.
Mhm.
Okay. The double amount. This is besides what they found in the sacks of their corn's mouth, which they also carried with them. They took 2 times the amount, because what they're trying to do now is they know how long this corn has lasted. Right? If they buy double that, it's going to extend the time and the trips. They don't have to make so many. Right? Even in that area, even though it's a famine, it's still some harsh weather. You know, going over those mountains.
Mhm.
There's a mountain range in between, right? There's flash flooding, just dust storms coming off the desert. We know that the high deserts across the Sea of Galilee comes off of there, and I mean it just blows hard, and it's nothing but dust, like our Habu here, right? So he's like, okay, let's get some extended time and more for a longer period, right? Okay, and then he said, and Benjamin, and they took him likewise with their father's leave, right? And when they rose up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph, they presented themselves to him with their petitions for more corn, as well as to answer to any questions that he should ask them. This is the honorable part that they had to, that they kept claiming to him. Here we are. Well, you got any more questions? Right? So I think they came with attitude. A little bit, right? They're going to be very protective of Benjamin, right? Especially Judah. Okay? So now we go to 16. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, bring these men home and slay and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon.
Mhm.
Right? Now, Joseph saw Benjamin, whom he knew, though he had not seen him for over 22 years. He recognized him. Right? Though he must have looked very much changed, Benjamin being about 10 years age when Joseph was taken into Egypt, yet being with the rest of his brethren, whom he knew very well, concluded it must be him, right? He probably had a vague memory. There'll be features and things that would be recognizable, right? Even after 20 years, right? He said to the ruler of his house. This would be that steward that we talked about earlier, right? Just as he was in Potiphar's house, he had a steward, okay? Bring these men home. This is to his own house, for Joseph was now at or near the place where there were granaries of corn was dispersed, right? Line up to the granary. They showed up here, da-da, right? Joseph would be there because it was the main storehouse for that part of it, distribution point, right? And so he's saying, okay, make sure these men go to my house, right? And that's good, because they still haven't got Simeon yet, have they? Right, so they're going to be wondering what's going on, right? And these men should make ready, or slay a slaughter, that is, a beast for food, a calf most likely, right? To be dressed, boiled, or roasted, or both. That might be fit for food. It cannot be thought that Joseph would order a dinner for his brethren, to whom as yet he did not choose to make himself known, by the eating of sheep or goat, which was a violation of the customs and laws of Egypt. They didn't eat it. It was nasty. They considered it an abomination. They wouldn't touch it. Okay. And they will dine with me at noon. So they just arrived early in the morning. Right, which makes at the time period, the granary was only open for during the day, from sun up to sunset. If you didn't get in, you waited till the next. Turned in our sacks at the first time we are brought in, that they may seek occasion against us and fall upon us and take us for bondmen and our asses. Right? These guys have a lot of guilt in their lives, don't they? You ever notice that? It was nothing positive, it's always negative. Right? I'm like, okay. And well, the man did what Joseph said, right?
And now there's
They're scaring Benjamin. Benjamin doesn't know what's going on, right? And they think it's because of the money that was returned in their sacks, right? When they say that seek occasion against us and fall on us, literally that he may roll himself upon us, or in the old day, early part of our first century, you got rolled, it means you got robbed, right? That's where it came from, okay? It's actually an old Egyptian term, okay? And take us for bondmen and our asses. Now, a bondman would be somebody that was scripted as a servant, right? We have bondmen today, don't we? And what do? They provide. They what?
They get people out.
They get. Says, and they came near to the steward of Joseph's house, and they communed with him at the door of the house. I thought that was amazing, right? And they came near to the steward of Joseph's house. The same person before called the ruler of his house. I knew those whose direction they were, but just before they came into the house, as is seen by what follows, they made up to him as having something to say to him. They're not going in there yet. Like, whoa, we need to talk here a minute. We're not stepping foot in there, right? Because you got to remember, Joseph is second most powerful person.
Guards.
Armed guards. He would have a mansion. It would be a very
It'd be like, like a fence stuff,
marble.
like a wall.
A wall. Yeah, it would be all protected. Oh yeah, he would have people inside and out, and they're like, oh, there's only one door in this one, right? Right. So yeah, they're being a little bit right? Precautious, I guess. When they meet and commune with him at the door of the house, they talked or exchanged words before they went in, being uneasy and eager to know what should be the meaning of the other, or which was unusual. Why are we coming here?
Yeah,
Last night.
they were probably expecting to be taken to the silo,
Yes,
and instead they were taken there.
right. They went a different place.
Mhm.
Like, uh-oh, right?
We've just been kidnapped.
Yeah. Joseph is just playing with their heads. He really is. And he's meaning it as nice, but they don't know that, right? Because of their own guilt. And they see it negative, right? And they said in verse 20, and said, "O sir, we came indeed down the first time to buy food." Verse 21, and it came to pass when we came to the inn that we opened our sacks, and behold, every man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight, and we had brought it again in our hand. So they're saying, we didn't steal it, and we brought every dime of it back, right?
That's why we're here.
We're returning. Yeah, that's what they're thinking,
Part
right?
of it.
Right. The key for the road in the first day's journey to refresh themselves and their cattle or their animals, right? They repeated again for the steward of the house that we read in Genesis 42. They said the same thing before, right? All right. So when they say they have brought it again, right, in their hand, they had brought it in order to pay for the corn which they had purchased before, having no design to defraud. They're being honorable men, right? So 22 says, "And other money have we brought down our hands to buy food. We cannot tell you who put our money in our sacks," right? They took double the money or double the quantity. They're bringing this beside in upright intentions, right? They're trying to be as straight up forward as they can be here, right? And the fact that they said they could not tell who put money in our sacks, we are quite ignorant of it and can by no means account for it. Therefore, hope no blame will be laid on us. Right? I love this steward. This is the steward talking in verse 23. And he said, "Peace be to you. Fear not. Your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. I had I took your money. I have an account of it." And which was true. Joseph gave it back after it had been accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
I had your money when you left.
yeah.
So you must consider that just
What I think is amazing is the loyalty of this servant. And I wish they had more history on him, on who he was. Because I'd almost believe that it was someone that was in prison with him, that he associated with or knew. Because he does whatever Joseph says. And he also plays well with him. All right? But that's my opinion, okay? But it's just amazing. He said, "Oh yeah, money, no problem," right?
And he may know what's going on.
I think he has a pretty good idea.
yeah. But he's telling them, I don't know what you're talking about.
I took
I
your
got
money.
your money.
You see how?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, relax. You guys are all right. You know? He's trying to calm down, right? He said, "Peace be to you, and fear not. Don't be uneasy or disturbed. Nothing to fear. No danger here." But I like how he phrases it. Your God and the God of your father. Where would he get that?
From Joseph.
From Joseph. That's a quote from Joseph. Because if he's Egyptian, which he most likely is, right? Joseph's been teaching.
Well, and he would have said, Joseph would have commonly said, "My God and the God of my father."
Yes.
And he would have recognized that Joseph was from Jerusalem,
Or Canaan, yeah.
and he would have.
Well, this is a common
Your
language.
God
for them.
has to be the same God.
God
as
is theirs,
Joseph's
right? He would
God,
assume
so-
that, correct? Right?
Your God.
Right? The treasure, the word signifies is unexpected or discovered in the Greek. The treasure in your socks is what he says, right? So disposing the heart of Joseph to order it to be put there, as the steward interpreted, who by being Joseph's family had got some knowledge of the true God and all of his wise and disposing providence. He knows he's blessed as long as he's with Joseph. You think he's gonna mess that up? No, I'm gonna go along. This guy's, you know, I mean, you know, he can see the future. So it was a blessing, right?
Right.
This brings one to think that Joseph has instructed this person the ways of God, and who he worshipped or who he or believed Joseph had it done by the providence or instruction of his God. He's fully committed to believing Joseph and whatever Joseph says. And if God said to do it, okay, it's done, right? Talking about faith. Pretty amazing if you think about it. His faith in Joseph alone, right? And Joseph's faith in God, right? So we can't influence others through your own faith. That's what I'm trying to get across there. Okay. He says, I had your money. The steward acknowledges that he received it of them, and that was sufficient to acquit them from guilt and theft from Egypt. Though he does not say that he put the money into their sacks or by whose order it was done. He only answered the question. I had your money. That's all he needed to know, right? And the fact that he brought Simeon out to them, either out of prison or out of some other room to them, which was no doubt done by the direction of Joseph, right? Because Joseph said if they returned, he would return. And so he kept his part of the bargain. Right? All right, 24 says, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them, they washed their feet, and he gave them their asses provender, food.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why they don't use food. Anyway,
Grain hay. whatever.
grain hay, right? After this they're relaxing already. Well, if they're not going to keep Simeon in mountain, they're not mounting all of us, right? And he gave them water and they washed their feet. This was which was usually done in the eastern countries after traveling as a common courtesy, especially when about to take a meal, and was both for refreshment and cleanliness. You know, if you've been walking 7 days in dirt and across the desert, you definitely want. Yeah. Did you know that all the nerve endings for your body end in your feet? If you wax those nerves, tension, stress, all of that comes out in your feet. You know from your classes, right? Or pressure points are there. All right. And he gave them the animals food. So he took care of everything so they could relax. That's what he's trying to get them to relax and not be so stressed out, right? So verse 25 says, and they made ready the present against Joseph came at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. So and asses, they took everything off the animals because he could feed them, right? They prepared it in a proper manner to present it to him when he came home at noon to dine. So they would have put it on display. Does that make sense? Right? Well, maybe their father did teach them something, right? All right.
Maybe they learned something from their father.
Maybe they learned, right? For they heard that they should eat bread there. Now, that's because probably told them wash up, clean up, because you're going to be dining, right? The word being bread being used for all provisions or edible food. This was told by them by the steward, most likely, right? Yeah. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present, which was in their hand, into the house, and bowed themselves to him to the earth. Now, when they brought the present within their hand into the house, every one of them took part of it in his hand and brought it into Joseph in the room where he was. Is what it's saying. They would have been in a
When he was over.
oh, yeah, right? actually, it would have been the
other
opposite,
way.
because he would still been at his high position. Well, your guest, if you brought
Right, you
in
bring 'em
days of
into
my mom
the-
and dad, they would have been shuffled into the proper room, and then you would have brought the refreshments in there to serve to them
To
on
formal
nice,
room and,
you know,
yeah.
platters and little teacups. You didn't touch that stuff.
Yeah.
But these were travelers. These weren't
So they cleaned up and
noble,
they relax and wash their feet and prepare themselves.
Change, whatever.
Right. At least try to clean themselves up a little bit, right?
Mhm.
They would take the outer garments off because they've been road dirty and
Right.
dusty and hang them up or whatever, right? Okay, so they bowed them. Oh, okay. It was delivered to him as a present from their father as well as from themselves. So they did make mention that it came. They bowed themselves to him to the earth again in the most prostrate and humble manner. Now again fulfilling his dream, right? Even more completely than before, because now all 11 of his brethren are together, signified by the 11 in the dream. All right, so they did that. They figured approximately 6 months has
well,
passed,
yeah.
right?
Simeon,
Yeah. At least 6 months,
they
right?
don't care for your child.
Right. Well, you kind of deserve to be there. It's you know, it's what do you call it?
Karma.
Karma. Yeah, I guess for taking out the city, right? Anyway,
Retribution.
retribution.
It's time for him to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Go think
Um,
about what you've done.
When
Don't
he
ever
asked them of
even
their
think about
welfare,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph asked about the prosperity, especially of the health of their bodies, whether they were all well and good health after so long a journey. That's the first thing about their welfare. He was concerned about it. I'm sure that's fine. Anyway, and he asked about their father, right? When they were with him before, they told him they were all the sons of one man who dwell in Canaan, a present to the governor, right, and the ruler, which the deliverer is coming from his servant. It is not improbable that Jacob sent his salutation to him as his servant, as benefactor to his needs and his family's lives. Jacob knows when to be humble, right? So this is part of the dream of Joseph was also fulfilled, which represented the son doing obeisance to him and
Obeisance.
Obeisance. Say that word.
Obeisance.
Obeisance.
Obey. Think
Like
big
obey
obedience.
sense.
Okay.
It's
Obeisance.
old school obedient.
Yeah,
Being
obedience.
obedient.
Right, being obedient, right. Obeisance. Okay. All right. So this is amazing if you think about it, right? Now we have the 11 stars
Mhm.
and the sun, which was in the dream.
Mhm.
It's being more completely completed, isn't it? Right?
Everything's lining up.
It's like, oh, there you go. You picked up on it.
And the
Stars are lining, this moon, the sun.
Yeah, everything in his dream's true. It just came true.
Yep. Right.
Okay.
This is the second time as they did, they bowed their heads, right? No doubt. And at every time they gave answer to Joseph's question, this is again observed, shows the full completion of Joseph's dream and God's fulfillment of it. So every time they answered him, they would bow.
Mhm.
And said, "Is this your younger?" They were bowing, and he's observing, and he picks out Benjamin. He already knows the rest of them.
Right.
He'd seen him before when they first presented themselves to him, right? He then made it to look like he took no particular or special notice of him, right? Or only gave him a side look, as if it were, but now he looked intently at him, okay? His mother's son, the son of Rachel, his mother, was his only brother by his mother's side, right? And then, and it said that he knew he was the same, but was willing to have it from their mouths to lead on to what he had further to say, right? Now, when somebody says, when he says, "Is God be gracious unto thee, my son?" You guys, we need to remember that this is all being interpreted. Joseph is speaking in Egyptian and has an interpreter there.
Oh, that's right.
He's still playing the part.
That's right.
He
hasn't
has to.
He has to, right? He's speaking as a superior, which he could say, you know, a governor in which capacity he was a father to his inferiors. Right? So that's why he can get away with saying my son. Okay? Yet as a man, a relation, a brother, though yet not yet discovered, he spoke in the most tender and affectionate manner, if you think about it. Right?
But they wouldn't have heard that though.
No. They would
because
have,
it was being interpreted.
yes, they would have only picked up as being the ruler over all. You all belong to me as children, right? Or
Right.
a son, right? We see it also as a religious man, and he wishes the best thing he could for his brother, which is the grace and goodness of God. They don't even realize he's blessing him.
And not only that, but they're not catching on.
A little slow.
They're so worried about themselves, they're not even paying any attention to.
The clues, all the clues that are in this whole 2 or 3 chapters. If
Yeah,
if
you
just
wouldn't find weird that somebody looks at your little brother and then runs away crying and then comes back not crying?
they wouldn't understand. Pay attention to it.
They don't know.
As
Yeah.
well, and he's that's why. Anyway. Prison, I mean, from the bottom to the top, right?
Cause you know he didn't get treated well by the people that bought him in the first place.
No.
So pit to Egypt.
What has happened to him hasn't happened to his brothers.
Mm-mm.
They've never hurt for anything.
No.
No, they were spoiled.
They've always been leaders. They've always been in charge. Now they're having to humble themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And God is making it so they handle themselves over and over. Get used to it, boys. And if nothing else, it will teach them humility. And that's what Joseph is actually teaching them here, is to have humility. And until it's time.
Yeah.
Okay.
They can't take it anymore.
And verse 30 says, and Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep, and he entered in his chamber and wept there. This is the second time he weeps for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is his bowels did yearn? It means that Joseph's passions grew strong, his affections were raised, his heart was full of tenderness, and there was such a flow of love and joy at the sight of his brother, but he couldn't express that to them.
Right.
Right? Joseph cries 3 times for them. You realize that? We're almost done, right?
Yes.
This is the second time he's cried over them. Release pain. And 3 is for joy.
Guilt.
No, the first is pain and guilt. But it says if you cry 3
The
times,
grieving process.
yeah, he's
What's
going
the
through.
third time I was yawning?
Is the third joy.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, wow. When I looked that up, I'm like, that's in the Hebrew belief system, okay? But I think it's but every time Joseph cries, I think he's letting go of some of the hostility and the So, okay,
But
yeah,
growing up in the
Yes.
with the right, so he got kidnapped at a time where he had just got just enough lessons and life lessons and morality.
From a
And
Jacob.
he got sold when he was 5. He probably would have set off. the
yes,
fence.
right. But he had matured enough by the time he was
Yeah,
17.
yeah, exactly.
And he was taking care of his father's business, so he already had some business sense that he had learned, which his brothers obviously didn't,
Right.
right? But he had the values, the morals, like you said,
And he
instilled in
had
him.
full belief in God.
Yes. So I think it's what saved him.
Mhm.
Anyway, the little conversation he had with him had Joseph ready to burst out who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Betcha. He was it was on edge, right? So, and he sought where to weep. He entered into his chamber, which would have been a private area, right? So he vent his passions in tears of joy and relieved himself where he could be at the most retired and not likely to be overheard, right?
Yep.
So 31 says, and he washed his face and went out and refrained himself and said, set on bread, right? So let's get the meal going, right? So second charge, he would have had makeup on.
Mhm.
Yeah, he would have.
These black stuff running down and just, you know. No, they wore makeup.
Yeah.
They painted them up.
He would have had to put makeup on
He
again.
did. Yeah. Well,
He
yeah.
probably had.
Etc. He was back to being the guy, right? Kind of like he goes from Israel to Jacob,
Right.
Joseph, governor to Judah.
Mhm.
Same thing. Both lost, both pain, both have hurt. Did you see the parallel there?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't pick up on the fact that they're both kind of like a mirror image,
Mhm.
you know, over the years. Okay, so provision set upon it for part for Joseph by himself, which was because he was a Hebrew, right? And the Egyptians might not be with him, but maybe for the sake of grandeur, he ain't being the next man in the kingdom to Pharaoh, right? That's what they. When you assume, you make, you know how that goes, right?
Mhm.
Right. And for them by themselves, that is to let us know that another table was placed for the spread of Joseph's brethren by themselves, which would have been another portion of the room for them 11 to sit down, right? He was still being in view of all of it. Okay, and the Egyptians did eat with him by themselves. So a third table was laid up for the Egyptian noblemen and others who were at this time Joseph's guests or regularly dined with him. The
His
ones
counsel.
the ones from the granary would have come with him for the noon meal. It would have been a business meeting type of thing. But they, being Egyptians, can't sit with him or eat with him. So you have 3 tables going, right?
Mhm.
It's pretty amazing, right? All right. The reason of which was given by the Tagrans of Ochanos and Jonathan is because the creatures the Egyptians worshipped, the Hebrews ate.
The sheep and the
Right.
goats.
Well, the ram,
Cows,
Right.
rams.
the rams, yeah. That's what you eat in your herd. You keep the females and you eat the males.
And then the Hebrew, well, it depends, I guess, if the Egyptians sacrificed animals or not, because he wouldn't want to eat with them because you're not supposed to eat with the food that your, well, the idol worship
Yes.
sacrificed.
Sacrificed, right? So yeah, so it would have been separate.
Mhm.
Right. Some scholars question whether such creatures as oxen. Remember, the ox was worshipped in Egypt, by the way. The sheep
Yep, I
Okay?
remember that, yep,
From
talking
before.
about
So
that.
that was
Mhm.
like numbers when I talked about Sunday.
Yes.
Right.
That's
Yes.
why it got.
Yeah, you brought that up, yeah.
They went over and ate the sacrificial
Official
food, which
food.
is, again, false idols.
Right, exactly,
But
okay?
also kosher, you know,
Right.
And like like the Egypts might eat pigs or whatever.
They had swine, yeah.
yeah.
So good.
I know. Not any particular distaste that they had to the Hebrews, but was their culture towards men of all nations.
Was,
It made them different, didn't it? They
So it was
This is a repeat of the last time they were here.
Is it?
so is it? It's almost
Exactly.
like segregation,
Yeah.
right?
no,
But
the,
is
does
that
Well,
that say
actually
the
classes.
Egyptians were
I was
racist?
gonna say, is that saying that they were trying to put themselves above everybody
Egypt
else?
was above everyone.
Social
Yeah.
distancing.
That's-
Remember, there's the COVID.
They stay 6 feet away.
Yeah. Well, the tables were 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
At least.
And as long as you stayed in your social group,
Yeah, you're okay then.
you're
You
okay.
see how this?
Or
I'm
how
not
you
going
can-
there.
Or how you can make it tie in.
You can make it tight. You can read into anything you want, right?
Right.
Let's get through 33 and 34.
Yeah, it's-
License isn't there, right?
I can't say that word. Right? All right. And 33 says, and they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, and the men marveled at one and another.
but yet another clue.
I know.
Yeah, and this is exactly what you said the last time. The Egyptian table is looking at the Hebrew table, and the Hebrew table is looking at the Egyptian table, and they're
And Joseph's going,
Yeah.
I got you in the right order. Yeah. Okay. I know all your births.
Because he would have set their places, right?
He
He
would
would
have
have had
told
the
the
servant,
steward.
the steward, that's
Right.
what I meant,
The
yeah.
steward would have known their ages.
Yeah.
See how tight in this steward is with him?
Mhm. Well, he's,
He took care of everything. Right? So anyway, same type of thing, right? He had full view of them according to birthright. Reuben, the firstborn, first on to Benjamin, right? They were, as they used to be in their father's family, or they were so placed by Joseph's instruction to a steward. That should have been a clue.
should have did, he should have left an empty chair.
Yeah, right.
The missing.
It's missing, right?
in the right place.
Ouch.
He has literally given them lots and
He's
lots
trying
of
to
food.
tell
That would have been so
Yeah.
awesome if he would have
He's done that, right?
Yeah.
We should do that as a play.
Right.
Anyway, all right. The men marveled at one another. Not the Egyptians, but the guests of Joseph, seeing 11 brethren placed in their manner, and these being Hebrews, and took notice of it. They're beginning to pick up on it, even though his brothers were a little slow.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How
Also-
did you know?
Also, Joseph's brethren, who either wondered at the manner of their being seated so regular, according to their age. The governor. Governor and the nobles of Egypt sat at meals. They're seeing it, but they don't see it. Is that
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You know, they can't see the forest for the trees and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the first before.
Right. But
I think
he knew their ages, right? He knew their names. He knew everything about them. But anyway, so they're just a little slow. All right.
Like a lot slow.
Yeah. With this meal, right? Whatever was to be served would have been brought to Joseph's table first.
Yep.
He would have cut off his portion before he sent it around. The governor always was served first. But here's the other part. Do you remember the baker and the wine tester, the steward that was in jail? Joseph would have had the same thing. They would have been right by his table, and everything would have been tasted before
Right.
it was given.
It would go from the oldest to the youngest.
Yes.
And then,
But-
they would serve it out.
Yeah, they would serve it out
But then when they got to Benjamin, they said,
5 times as much.
because he told them,
You know why?
unless the steward knew, unless he talked to the steward, or
He was into jail.
because he told them about his life.
Yes.
About what had happened.
What had happened? And it's
And
somebody.
he, in that power, would be able to say who he's gonna have
Who's-
by
yes.
his side. Right.
Pharaoh said,
Yeah.
"Do you have full authority? Do whatever you want." He took somebody
so
that knew-
Benjamin probably didn't even have to tell the steward how to do, because he would have already known that he.
Well, and he would have already known that that
He
was
didn't. Know,
actually his
he already
brother.
knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't say anything because Joseph would have sworn him to secrecy.
So, but really, the only brothers that should be picking up clues are the ones that actually sold them to
Yes.
the guys that were going to
Simeon,
Egypt. Yep.
But they're too busy covering their butts.
not Reuben,
Not Reuben, because Reuben was like, "Oh my God, he's dead," right? Because
Judah.
he went to go rescue him.
right?
And he was
and he
gone.
was
Right. Some of the rest of them, though, right?
gone. Most of the rest of
Yeah,
them.
There was
So-
about 5 of them.
yeah.
And Benjamin wouldn't know.
No, Benjamin was innocent, right?
So about 3 of them didn't
Probably,
know.
yeah, 3 or 4
Four
would
of
have
them,
known
yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
Right.
they should have been going. "Ooh, this is weird."
Come on, you're not picking up on this, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, and they drank and were merry with him. After dinner, they drank wine liberally and plentifully, but not to excess and intemperance, as to be cheerful and good spirits. Their fears being dissipated by this generous entertainment they met with. Right. Right. I put a reference in Herodotus says, no Egyptian man or woman might kiss the mouth of a Greek or use a knife or spit or a pot, that is, a knife or Greek had cut anything with or spit on had roasted meat. They were not. Whatever meat was cut for Joseph, right, would have been taken away and another one used for the Egyptian table.
That's
And
right,
then-
because they'd be sharing food,
Yep.
and it's probably different meats.
And no, he did a calf.
Oh, okay.
Remember the
So
calf?
something everybody could have.
Yes.
That's
But
right.
they couldn't use the same utensils. That should have been a clue too.
Be Hebrew, let him be Hebrew.
Right.
the bases of them still exist. Two they know of. It's just, but he, God bless him.
Keep yours if you want to.
I got one at home. I think Sue took it.
I have one at home as well.
Shelley's got one
I know,
now.
because I wrote
I can't reach it. One's Joanne, and then Cleo's daughter, and then
Cleo.
Cleo.
He's Vince's brother from
From
another mother.
Yeah.
Another one of those?
Yeah.
Well, let's just say that you wouldn't recognize the two of them together. They're that different. Okay.
You're gonna have to help me with these names.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was another one, but I can't think of her name right now.
Who's Danielle?
I didn't get to the last part of it
Yeah.
finished because you guys were in a hurry. It's for Mike. Mick.
Same motorcycle accident?
Yeah,
Yes.
Mick.
Mick.
Mick, where's the Mick at?
I didn't put Mick in there. I didn't get time.
We need to add
Healing
Nick.
and
Been a rough day.
Recovery
Brief-
from surgery, past
Post-
motorcycle,
Yeah, post
post.
post
motorcycle accident. Yeah. But it's Mick.
I know it's
Nick
probably like
and-
overslept.
I think it's
You can do
Danielle.
that. Ask him
She's
if you can
12,
oversleep
and they
all
don't know
day.
what.
Me?
You don't have any,
This
no,
happened?
I'm saying if you do that, just stay.
Your body runs on a day light cycle. The pineal gland in your brain responds to
I can't
stimuli
spell.
from the light.
Mhm.
And if you don't get that, you're tired. It wears you out. You know what I mean? It's like they flip on a switch.
They can probably
We
do
got
that.
current. Okay.
Switch back here. The microphone's over there, right?
But you understand what I'm saying? It's a physiological thing. It's all born in us. Blind people have a problem with it. You've seen the commercials about
Well, I got a
that.
problem with it with kids.
Yes.
It's like,
It
you
does.
can't stay awake and I'm like,
All right,
alright.
I think I got it all this.
Yep, you have the same problem, right? Because it's shutting off and coming on, shutting off. And it ain't causes all kinds of good.
It's a binary, it's one or a zero,
Yeah,
on or
pretty
off.
much. Yeah, actually, that's physiologically, that's what's going on.
Parathyroid.
Yeah,
All right, Heavenly Father, Lord. Jesus, we just submit our knees, giving these up to you, Lord, to handle. We want to lift up Joanne for healing. She broke her foot. Yeah, heal that for sure, because I know what her feet problems are like, and it's no fun. So we just ask you touch her feet, Lord, and make them feel good. Also healing for Cleo's daughter. Some cancer. She's battling
Bilateral
cancer,
breast
Lord. So
cancer.
touch that cancer and heal it. Dave. Pass out, Lord, figure out what the situation is there, Lord. Help the doctors to find out what's going on and get her normal again. And also, we just want to lift up our sister Linda for another miraculous healing, Lord. That you can just to take care of whatever that situation is that's ailing her or situations. And if it's your will, Lord, just heal all these situations that we lift up to you this evening. And we just say all these things in Jesus' name.